because it came out, I was born, well, we don't need to discuss exactly when I was born, but we are approximately the same age.
Hmm. You and me, or you and Star Wars?
Me and Star Wars.
Hello, and welcome into another episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult, a neurodiversity podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ellie Michaels. I use she, her.
I am your other host, Jessica Michaels. I use she, they.
And today we're talking about the cognitive shuffle method of falling asleep. This sounds like a dance done at old folks' homes for people with dementia. It's the cognitive shuffle where you're like talking to the person, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're my girlfriend from 1933. Um, is that what the cognitive shuffle is, or is
No,
that
but
just
that,
horrendously dark?
yeah, no, it is horrendously dark, and it is not what the cognitive shuffle is. So basically, the cognitive shuffle is a strategy to help you get to sleep. And you can use it to get to sleep initially, or if you wake up in the middle of the night, this is a way to get yourself back to sleep. It was actually created by a Dr. Luke P. Bowdoin from Simon Fraser University, and the goal is to help you get to sleep quickly. So most of the articles that I saw on it picked times less than 7 minutes. So fall asleep in 7 minutes, fall asleep in 5 minutes. Nobody really agreed, but they all agreed it was under 7 minutes.
That sounds made up. That sounds entirely made up. No one can fall asleep that fast. Like I've for, I've been anesthetized for surgery, and I didn't fall asleep that fast. Like
To be
you could
fair,
even do you could even do like the Looney Tunes mallet to the head, and I'm not going to fall asleep that fast. I'm going to be laying there for 10 minutes talking about how much my head hurts.
you do not deal with anesthesia very well.
I don't deal with any drugs very well.
Yeah. But I don't deal with sleep very well, which is why I was willing to try it. First of all, it seemed, I mean, it was low cost. Obviously, it's free. You can think, without paying for the privilege. So I could do that. And I saw it come up
My
in
ADHD meds would like to disagree.
I saw it come up, I've saw it in a few different places. So it seemed harmless to try. It seemed harmless to try. So I thought.
Spoilers. How'd that go?
So the idea is you pick a word. It could be any word. So it could be word like coach or bedtime. And you start with the first letter of the word, and then you think of other words that start with that letter. So if you picked gifted, for example, as your word, then you'd think of maybe goat or garage, grumpy or grandmother or gain. And you just keep thinking of words that start with that letter until you run out. And then you move on to the next letter in the word. So when you run out of G words, you start with I words. So ink, ice cream, igloo, important, all the way through till you're done, and then you'd move on. And ideally, by the time you get to the end of the word, I think the idea is you'd fall asleep, but you just go at your own pace until you fall asleep. If stressful thoughts come up, you sort of acknowledge them and move on. But the idea is that you don't want to pattern things, so you don't want to pick words that are important to you. So, I might not necessarily pick, for E, I wouldn't say Ellie, because obviously
That's me.
Ellie is very important to me. So you would stick with things, empire, elephant, that didn't have relevance to you. And because you're trying to just have random images, so unconnected, unimportant images that separates you from the stress. And then supposedly you can fall asleep quickly and easily.
Okay, so immediate problem I see with this. This is basically an improv game that you and I play on purpose for funsies. And it's also something that we usually play when we're laying in bed and we're bored trying to fall asleep.
Yes.
So, and we're a bit more hardcore about it, where it's not just you have to come up with a word, you then need to put it in a sentence that makes sense.
Mhm.
And it's not always like I words or S words. Sometimes it's mathematical terms. And like,
Mhm.
can you have almost a whole conversation with each of your sentences having a different math term that neither one of you has said yet?
Yes. So, yeah, I think inherently for us, there's just a problem in that we often do this as a competitive thing. I mean, it is kind of informally competitive, but you always kind of want to have the last one or you want to get the best one. And so that's a problem. All right, already, because my brain is primed to find the best, most esoteric and, example, or find the funniest one, or find as many as possible because I want to find all of them is the idea. I just want to keep going. So the fact that my brain does this competitively is a problem. I think another reason that it's a problem, and the reason that you and I do this as a game is a lot of neurotypical people, we tend to be hyperlexic, which can lead to some pretty big vocabularies. I think one of the things that I consistently notice in neurodivergent speakers who have this particular trait of neurodivergence is this desire to get a word exactly right. We don't want to settle for a word that is okay when there's a word that is perfect to describe a situation. So we will often get fairly technical about definitions, or we will search to find the right word. The meaning, the upshot of that is we got a lot of words that we can access in our brains, even trying to fall asleep and be relaxed. It's not necessarily relaxing when you already feel like, okay, you need to find all of them and you have a lot. We also often, if you're a neurodivergent person who has a pattern ability, so you can see patterns easily, part of the premise of this shuffling is that it's random. And the random part is important, that disconnection from term to term or not using terms that are important to you. That's kind of the engine that makes this process work, from what I understand. However, when you're a person who sees patterns easily, then, and we've talked frequently about our brains kind of racing to do this. When you are coming up with supposedly random words without yourself being a true random word generator, you see patterns in things very easily, which makes the game harder to play because I may have two words that seem totally unrelated, but when my brain goes, oh, wait, no, because first of all, they already start with the same letters. They already have that connection. But it's like, oh, they have the
Mm-hmm.
same prefix. Well, that's a pattern. Okay. It can't be
Mm-hmm.
two words together that have the same prefix. Okay. It can't be two words together that have the same number of syllables. Do they have the same root word? Okay, that doesn't work. Are they agricultural terms? Are they things that occur in nature? Are they things, you know, you can find a pattern in almost anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so it makes the game hard because you keep stopping yourself and you keep, I kept stopping myself and going, oh no, I can't use that. I can't use that. So then the problem was I would think of all the words I could, and it's already hours into me trying to fall asleep. I had finished my word and then had moved on to another word and another word. Well, then I had to try to keep falling asleep using, finding terms that were words that I had not used before, because otherwise that felt like a pattern, and so it became moderately stressful, not relaxing, and not a successful sleep situation for that night. And I really thought that was the end of it, that that was the worst that would happen, is that I wouldn't get to sleep quickly. Little did I know what was to come.
And before we get on to what's, that's like the main component of neurodivergence and giftedness and whatnot, is that we never had the pruning of the synapses and the connections. Like all of these things, everything is connected by a billion different things. And that's why, like, oh, we were talking about egg salad, then how did you come up with combat boots? Why did you want to tell me an interesting fact about that? It's like, well, clearly this connection, that connection, that connection, that connection to that company, and that, like, it's just built in that we can do this. This is like the most neurotypical advice I've ever heard someone give. And there really needs to be like a stamp on the front of that article of like, for NTs only. Like, this is not this.
Well, what it's funny is I didn't tell you before I tried it, but I told you after I tried it when I was kind of at my wit's end, and you looked at me and I can't read people's facial expressions, but I read the heck out of yours. You were like, I cannot believe you even tried that. That's the worst idea that I have ever heard for you to get to sleep. So you spotted the problems right away. I did not. So would you say ultimately that you think that night went the way that you would have expected it to go?
1000%.
Yeah. So I was up all night with words going through my head. And when I would try to fall asleep, like when I'd start to drift off, all of a sudden it would be like gentrification, just random words. And that didn't help either. That really didn't help. So I got through the night, and then I thought it was just going to be a humorous story or a non-event. But part of my brand of autism comes with fairly strong internal echolalia, meaning I very consistently repeat words, phrases, songs, scenes from shows. These things are always running in my mind. Most people, I think, or a lot of people, have some type of internal monologue. I have channel changing, from when we were kids and there were 100 cable channels, but the only way to actually see what was on them was to see what was on them. And it just keeps going on a loop forever and ever and ever. And it doesn't really stop. So the next day, when I wasn't trying to fall asleep and I wasn't trying to pick terms, I couldn't keep my brain from picking terms all day. When I would see a word that maybe I hadn't used before, like, oh, floor or faculty or famine or flabbergasted, fungible, fewer, fantastic, flammable, that just kept happening. So all day, words from my word groups were just going on in my head. So the same thing that had kept me up the night before was happening to me during the day and was an incredible distraction. And I couldn't make it stop. That lasted for about 2 days after I tried to do this. So the next night when I tried to fall asleep, I was actively trying not to do this, but I couldn't help myself. So I had to put on an audiobook or something and really concentrate on it just to stop my brain from doing it. It honestly didn't resolve until over the weekend we went to see Beetlejuice. And that movie has enough in it for me to kind of go back to or reference that has what my brain has latched onto. And it has finally gotten rid of this trying to come up with unconnected words that start with a particular letter. So I ultimately probably lost about 4 nights of sleep.
That is the opposite of what the intent of that was. If ever there was an opposite outcome, that was it.
Not to mention the weird looks I got from people when just in the middle of a conversation about, about anything, I'd be like, oh, pumpernickel. And then I go back on because it's almost like this became a subroutine, which is something that frequently happens. We have kind of just these thoughts that keep going in our minds. But then again, when a good word would come up, that would interrupt whatever I was doing or focusing. And oddly enough, people find that a little strange when you just blurt out unrelated words at any point in time in a conversation. You, I think, are pretty used to it though. You
Mhm.
know, if all of a sudden I'm just like standardization and then, we can carry on with our life. I was very impressed though that you did not take the bait to continue and try to participate, because that would have been the only thing that would have made it worse, is if you and I were going back and forth with these.
I knew that would make it worse, and I intentionally did not engage
Thank you.
because even when we do that for funsies, after the game is done for several days, it's like, oh, equivalent. Okay, that counts as a math term, right? Yeah. Like, no, it's a subroutine that doesn't want to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a subroutine that doesn't ever want to stop. It's a
Mm-hmm.
self-perpetuating problem. So yeah, no,
Yes.
I didn't want to make that worse for you.
It definitely took several days to fade. I'm a little worried that having this conversation will kick it up again. I'm hoping not, but that's why I didn't want to do a full out explanation, because I'm genuinely worried I won't be able to turn that off. Because with that type of echolalia, there also comes other things, where I'm counting the syllables on my hand and trying to, and it just sort of activates all of these things that my brain can do, which are often fine and harmless. But sometimes when you're trying to do things like apply for jobs or write a book, you don't want those word related subroutines playing, because they can really get in the way. It's like all of a sudden I'm writing in my book and I realize every sentence is alliterated to one of the words, in my train of thought. That's not good. So yeah, I would say on the whole, it did not work for me.
I'm trying real hard not to just jump in like, no, no, no. I have important things to do. You have important things to do. We should we should wrap this terrifying topic, this
Yeah.
potential pit of despair. Ah,
I just want to point out, yeah, terrifying topic.
potential pit of perdition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, no. That has to do it for this episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult.
Otherwise, that will lead to some very bad bumbling becoming.
Don't
it's
do
potential
this.
it's potentially problematic for us as a pair. But I don't want to continue to pontificate on this particular subject because there is peril ahead.
If you like our show and would like to support us, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe and rate us on YouTube at Gifted Kid, Messy Adult. I just have to read the thing. I just have to read the thing. I wrote it down on purpose so I could just read it. You know what? I'm just
I
going to use
am
the one from the last episode.
I am confident in your coordination. As a couple, I think
Is coordination, isn't coordination Q? No. No,
no,
it's C.
let's
Why do I
see.
think it's Q?
Because eventually these make you go crazy.
Uh,
Honestly, you start to spiral in the words. It's not good. 0 out of 10. No stars.
If you like the show and would like to support us, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe and rate us on YouTube at Gifted Kid Messy Adult. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and then the bell thing because, okay. If you'd like to support us financially, you can find us on Patreon at the Neurodiverse Workplace, where subscribers get access to all kinds of bonus content. And you can help keep the lights on here and at home while also helping us provide free resources and support for our fellow neurodivergent adults. If you'd like to suggest a future topic or just say nice things and give us that sweet, sweet external validation, please email us your thoughts, questions, or praise to giftedkidmessyadult@gmail.com. And you can also support us by checking out the GoFundMe to help pay for our medical expenses. There's a link in the show notes, or just search Jess and Ellie's Fight for Health. So until next time, take care of each other out there.
Bye, buddies.
You.
And that's the end of our show.
She was laughing. She was laughing.